Next, we'd like to share the story of one of our viewers who wrote to us as a foreigner living in China under lockdown. He said he's been watching our show daily to get true information, something hard to find inside China. He does this through a special kind of software, which helps overcome the regime's internet blockade. For safety reasons, we'll keep him anonymous. He told us there are two groups of people in his city. The first group, making up about 90% of locals, still blindly supports everything the Chinese regime does. The other 10% want to get back to work and feed their families. They seem to have questions about what authorities are doing to them. He said he finds it surprising that so many people continue to support the policies. But he also explains why. That is, he was never indoctrinated by the Chinese Communist Party's education system. He also pointed out that people in his city know very little about COVID-19. He said they don't understand it's a respiratory illness that jumps from person to person and attacks the lungs. Neither do they understand the danger of crowds or dining in restaurants. What's more, they are unaware that Chinese-made vaccines perform poorly compared to foreign-made doses. He believes the lack of COVID-19 literacy is intentional because authorities don't want people thinking too much about the origins of the pandemic. Instead, he says authorities feel the most important thing is for people to trust the regime in everything. Confined to his home for weeks, he fortunately has enough food, but said he got a new appreciation for what the Jews experienced in World War II. He went on to say that locals don't question it when their neighbors disappear and are taken to quarantine camps. He said he's pretty sure if he disappeared, no one would come looking for him because there's so much blind trust in the Communist Party. About half of the foreigners living in Shanghai say they are planning to leave the city, while much of the other half are reportedly weighing their options. A mid-April survey was conducted via a local branch of Hong Kong Focus Media. It interviewed 950 foreigners living in Shanghai. The survey estimated that number of foreigners living in the city will be cut in half within just a year. Nearly 50% of those interviewed said they plan to leave Shanghai in the coming year, if not sometime sooner. Nearly 40% said they'll hold off on making any big moving decisions until the pandemic is over. More than half of those surveyed hold a master's degree. And more than 210,000 foreigners lived in Shanghai in 2020 before the pandemic broke out, the most among Chinese cities. Shanghai authorities announced a white list of over 600 companies in mid-April. Businesses on the list will reportedly get priority for reopening and resuming normal operations. At the same time, foreign businesses running in the city say they've had a hard time staffing their factories again because of the city's widespread lockdown orders. A mix of political and business risks have made Shanghai less attractive for investors in recent months. According to recent data from the Institute of International Finance, foreign investors are pulling money out of China on an unprecedented scale. Worth noting, other markets saw no comparable outflow during the same time period. Some residents in Shanghai don't seem to be in a forgiving mood. Lockdown orders have been lifted for some of the city's neighborhoods. As many of them emerge from their homes for the first time in weeks, the Chinese Communist Party seems to be taking the opportunity to boost its reputation. Residents in some buildings were asked to come downstairs to sing songs praising the regime.
The lockdown in this building is about to be lifted. After they've been shouting for a long time, asking residents to come downstairs, no one is willing to come down and sing praises in front of the Chinese Communist Party flag. The show cannot be staged.
In this video, one woman can be seen waving a Chinese Communist Party flag, waiting for building tenants to come downstairs. Another clip from Shanghai shows people wearing protective gear as they pose in front of the same flag, taking photos and video. It's part of a relatively common publicity practice for the regime. Following natural disasters, lockdowns, or other major events, state-run media outlets publish pictures or videos of people praising what they call the great leadership and guidance of the Communist Party. In Shanghai, China's global financial hub, a top supplier to tech giants like Apple and Tesla is facing a major problem: widespread COVID-19 infections inside its facility. Employees of Quanta Computer Co., a Taiwan-based manufacturer that produces Tesla accessories and Apple laptops, recently revealed to the Epoch Times that thousands of workers were infected at the company's Shanghai factory, and that their calls to the outside world for help were silenced. Last week, an employee surnamed Li said he's living in one of the factory's dormitories where cross-infection happened. He said there are more than 40,000 people working at the factory, and thousands have tested positive for COVID-19. At the same time, alarms have been installed on all dormitory doors, but Li called them useless and questioned if the devices are to prevent them from leaving their rooms. Li added that despite there being so many confirmed patients, drinking water facilities and toilets are still shared in the dormitory. According to another employee surnamed Liu, many people inside are now experiencing cold-like symptoms, while their colleague surnamed Lin said the factory has now banned, quote, everyone from speaking up, adding the situation there is chaotic. We contacted the company for details, but no one answered the phone. Another top supplier for Apple iPhones, Foxconn, is stopping work at 2 factories in a city near Shanghai. That's after the company reported unspecified numbers of new virus cases on site Monday. A Federal Communications Commission commissioner is calling out Apple for censoring content in China, specifically Apple's blocking of the Voice of America news app in China. Let's hear more from the commissioner.
A top Federal Communications Commission officer is slamming Apple's Tim Cook over human rights. In an open letter to the CEO last Wednesday, FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr accused Cook of hypocrisy. Carr says that's because Apple had done, quote, the bidding of Communist China by removing Quran and Bible apps and the Voice of America mobile app from its app store in China.
For decades now, we have heard from large global corporations like Apple that preach about these human right values. And at the same time, they're totally compromised in those values because they are standing shoulder to shoulder with genocidal regimes like Communist China.
The comment comes just after Cook gave a speech in Washington lauding free speech. The FCC official said Apple's decision to remove the Voice of America app, which is congressionally funded, was at the behest of the Chinese regime, and that the move aimed to block a key tool for Chinese people looking for uncensored information. He pressed Cook to inform the FCC by this Friday whether Apple will restore Chinese access to the app. Congress only allowed state-funded Voice of America to broadcast outside of the U.S. because of concerns about unfair competition with commercial media.
I hope that we are turning the page on this and that we all come to realize the dangers of doing business with Communist China. It's only emboldening them. It's certainly not bending them towards freedom or bringing them towards our values. Quite the contrary.
In a statement, Apple said the Voice of America app was removed after Chinese authorities informed Apple that it lacked a license to operate there. The company stated that Apple is only complying with local laws. We reached out to Apple for comment but didn't get a response by airtime.
The Wuhan Institute of Virology is allowed to have a U.S. lab that it partners with destroy secret files. That's according to an agreement uncovered from a Freedom of Information Act request. Those files include data stemming from all of the lab's collaborative work together. The legal document is a memo of understanding about cooperation. It's between the Wuhan lab and the Galveston National Laboratory at the University of Texas Medical Branch. The agreement means either of the 2 labs can have the other delete secret files at the other's request. The memo states, the party is entitled to ask the other to destroy and/or return the secret files, materials, and equipment without any backups. The nonprofit investigative research group called U.S. Right to Know discovered the information. The memo aims to promote research and training cooperation between the 2 labs. They signed it back in 2017 and is in effect until October, but according to the agreement, the terms remain binding even after it expires. The document effectively states that all documents and data are subject to a request to delete them. The Wuhan lab came back into the spotlight when the pandemic started amid growing speculation that the virus may have leaked from it. The lab denies that claim, but Beijing hasn't let anyone investigate. That has prevented any meaningful probe into the theory. The Wuhan lab and the Galveston National Laboratory partnered up to streamline their work on dangerous pathogens. That's according to a joint announcement in the journal Science. But experts say the memo about removing data raises an alarm. They say it could potentially mean the labs broke the law. For example, Reuben Gutman, a partner at Gutman, Bushner, and Brooks, told Right to Know, "The clause is quite frankly explosive. Anytime I see a public entity, I would be very concerned about destroying records." The Galveston National Lab partnered with the Wuhan lab in 2013. The Texas lab's former director had made multiple trips to the Chinese lab over the years, and the Galveston lab was among the first in the world to get samples of the virus from the CDC. That was about 3 weeks after the director told his Chinese counterparts to share the material. The memo appears to contradict what scientists at the Chinese lab said. They said they would never scrub critical research information. One virologist there said allegations that her lab would do that are baseless and appalling.